The last few videos found me exploring the Payette National Forest, and after I left Payette, traveled down to Boise to resupply, and then up into the Boise National Forest during the middle of a raging forest fire, one of the worst in Idaho history. And then I left the forest and went into the salmon chalice. But before all that, traveling down from McCall into Boise, I followed the Payette River, which was quite striking. I've seen videos since then of inflatable rafts going down this section of the river, but it's very impressive, as you cannot make mistakes on this section. It's several miles long, but it's just like this. It's boiling rapids all the way down, non-stop, and you really can't make mistakes on this section, else you'd be swimming the river. And as I drove into Boise, just like the last time, it's covered in a blanket of smoke and extremely hot, to the point where I'd only spent the night there and then moved out the next morning. I'm in the Boise National Forest, and apparently the Boise is on fire. There was some firefighters at the top of the hill, and there's smoke everywhere. I thought it was coming west of here, but apparently it's also in the Boise, and it's making it fairly miserable. And it's beautiful out here. If it wasn't for all the smoke, there is to be no stopping. I'm assuming that they're okay with this kind of stopping, just not stopping in the middle of the road because of the smoke, maybe, because you can't see anything. And I bet this place is really beautiful. You just can't tell because it's all blanketed in a thick, dense pile of smoke. Traveling northwest into the Boise and then into the Salmon Chalice National Forest. This is what I saw for 20 miles or so. Every dirt road intersection was blocked off by rangers and firefighters, and this was a pretty serious fire. It eventually engulfed 200,000 acres in one of the most expensive and most devastating fires in Idaho history. And it was very significant. But I was glad to be there in the middle of it. It was kind of exciting. As you can see, the roads are amazing, and I really wanted to pull my motorcycle out here and do some more exploring, but I was afraid I was a little bit too close to the fire, so I kept on traveling. A little bit of a taste of the road from the windshield of the bus, but you do get an idea. It's just a shame that it was so smoky the whole time I was up here. I would much rather have seen the place with sunshine and be able to breathe the clean air. But apparently this is what this area does every year now. Every time I've been to Boise, it's been on fire. The area, anyway. It's typically dry, very dry in the summer, and there is a lot of fuel up here, despite the fact that the whole place burns every year. In fact, I read some statistic that the Boise Salmon Chalice area has lost 68% of its forest, its timber, in the last 2 to 3 decades. So it's a significant burn every year, apparently. I think the only thing that's keeping it from burning completely every year is the fact that the wood burns off. A large portion of the wood burns off every year, so there's nothing really to burn. But yet there's still woods that burn. But just an amazing place, despite the fact that there's so much damage. And the more I read and learn about forestry and development and the management of the forest, the more I learn. This is just part of the natural cycle. It's hard to accept nature that is on fire, that's burning, as being part of a natural cycle, but it actually is, despite what you think of the environment. I would much rather have had a nice, clean, beautiful week in this area of the forest, but it's just part of nature, and it's been burning for thousands, millions of years. Sometimes some parts of the country burn more than others, and you can see all the rangers here. Almost at every intersection that I passed, there was a ranger down one of the roads blocking it off and letting firefighters through. But there's two big forest fires. One, the smaller one's called the Rough, and the larger one's called Pioneer. And Pioneer was the biggie. It was the one that burned for weeks and destroyed almost 200,000 acres. But eventually I got out of the majority of the smoke and went over a pass and stopped at the first campground that was smoke-free. And it was beautiful, right on a creek. And it was only $5 a night. And I decided to stay. And like I said, when I got there, it was relatively smoke-free. As you can see, looking back down the road towards the fire, there's nothing in the sky. And I thought, okay, this is home for a few days while I do some exploring. So I pulled out the bike and did some exploring. And when I got back that evening, the sky had changed and had filled with smoke. So I had to look for other options. Until returning to camp, it was an extraordinary day of exploring and riding. Most of the riding I did was southeast of the campground, which apparently was enough to block most of the smoke. I did not see smoke until I was heading back north from Sun Valley. I went down to a ski town called Sun Valley, and it was just beautiful. And I wished I would have spent more time there, because at that point I did not know that the smoke was encroaching up through the valley and into the salmon chalice where I was camped. But my bliss and my illusion of a smoke-free evening was soon destroyed as I was riding back north. I could see the haze in the distance, and I knew what I was in for, but I was going to camp there that night anyway. But the next morning, I got up and moved further up into the mountains and over another pass, hoping to escape. And at the point that I was climbing up the mountain here, it looked like I was going to be smoke-free at this next campground for a while, hopefully. But I did see some smoke coming in as I got closer to the campground. But this dirt road I went down was just miles and miles and miles of riding, and there's not a lot of camping options. There were a couple of pull-offs before I got to the actual campground, but I think they were more oriented for like horses and things like that, because I did see a lot of horse trailers, and people looked like maybe they were logging. And not that I needed a campground, I could have just as easily camped at one of the pull-offs, but I did want to get a little bit to more open space so I could see any kind of fire or anything that was coming over the hills if that was going to be the case. Next morning I got up early and got a good start on a huge dirt road loop that looped around some historical settlements and lots of mining history in the area. And here I'm pulling up on some historical markers, and this was an old town, I believe, of settlers, miners, etc. And there's quite a few little historical markers on this route. As I crossed over the mountain pass on this loop trip, I noticed some interesting things in the river. And this is a fish weir, and I'm not sure what the purpose is, whether to count or to catch, but I know that there is some controversy on catching and counting spawning fishery, hatchery things. There's quite a lot of controversy, and I don't know enough to actually talk about it one way or the other. but apparently the practice, whether federal or tribal, is quite controversial. And further downstream from the fish weir was this monstrosity, a floating factory for scraping gold off the bottom of the river. And apparently this device collected a 4 foot by 4 foot block of gold equivalent off the bottom of the river. Quite impressive if you think about it. Well, I'm back at camp changing my oil, and the smoke has gotten worse. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's raining ash here, so I don't know what that means wind wise. I don't know if ash will blow for 100 miles or 50 miles or 5 miles. I don't know, but I'm a little bit concerned. I do have a neighbor. I might step over there and ask them, since I don't really know if I should be concerned, if this is just something that happens every freaking every summer. Apparently you're supposed to come to Idaho in June or late spring, because July everything catches on fire. Well, talking to the neighbors, they reassured me that I shouldn't be concerned until the helicopters start flying over and dumping water, and you see firemen with hard hats and yellow suits, and I said, you guys are going to be here a while? We'll be here till Tuesday. I said, if I see y'all packing up, I'll know that's my sign. So they're not concerned. I'm not going to be too concerned, but I don't know how long I'm going to put up with this smoke. It's just awful. I don't know where I'm going to go besides deep in the mountains of Colorado to try to get away from it, because I can't go west, or I can't go east. Just go east, because the smoke's going to follow you. So I don't know. I'll go figure something out. I need to finish changing my oil and get some dinner. Please join me next time as I explore the burning wilderness that is the Salmon Chalice National Forest. See you then.